excuse me, everyone. Let's get this party rolling. Yes, oh geez, you can hear me now. I gotta tone it down now. Yes, before we get started, I'd just like to welcome everyone to our Committee of the Whole meeting. First off, we are echoing in here, but okay. It's still, we're going through some trials here, getting this thing working, as you can tell. Our last council meeting, I allowed a lot of conversation, which I wanted, which we needed as a community. We heard, but moving forward, anyone in the public that wants to speak, come up to the podium, introduce yourself, and it has to be an agenda item as well. And that will be spoke about, and we can take that feedback and use that as council votes accordingly. So yeah, and I would ask that we, like I said, go up to the podium. But anyway, and so anyway, welcome. We're ready to go. Okay. First off, before we begin, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered today next to the Scoodic, the St. Croix River, on ancestral unceded territory of the Pastunamakati people who have lived here for countless generations along the river, in the lands, throughout the watershed, and on the bay. So, oh yeah, so one more thing too, council, this is for you guys and girls. Anytime you need to speak, I want you to speak through me. So I just address me and say, through you, Mayor, and then that way we can get some order, and plus these camera people can keep up and know who's speaking. So let's start. I need a mover and seconder for the agenda. The Committee of a Whole meeting for April 12th, 2023 be approved. Heislip and Councillor Harding. Any question? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried, and away we go. First up is our public delegations, New Brunswick Internal Student Program. Wendy Brooks is. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, I'm Wendy, and this is Debbie. She's the manager of the Southern District. So I'm going to let her begin. And did you received our slideshow, or? Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, wonderful. Wonderful, thanks. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for inviting us this evening. And as Wendy said, Wendy and I work together in the southern part of the province. And we have from Sussex to St. Stephen. So all of the high schools in between, they're all a part of our world, if you like. And we're here tonight to talk about the New Brunswick International Student Program. We're trying to build awareness in our communities of how important the role of those students are in our daily lives, in our communities, in our schools. So thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening.
Okay, so if we're able to look at those slides, I'm not sure, or who I ask for that.
I don't have the presentation myself.
That's all right.
Perfect. Okay, great. So that's the first one. So the reason why we're here, Debbie just mentioned, is to we're going around to different councils, because we do from St. Stephen's to Sussex, and we want people to be more aware of our program and what we have to offer. And so the New Brunswick International Student Program, we bring students from all over the world, from all through New Brunswick. So right now in southern New Brunswick, from Sussex to St. Stephen's, we have the numbers on there. It's over 200 students right now in southern New Brunswick, and that's probably about the same in every district. So that's almost 1,000 students, and they're from ages 11 to 18 from all over the world. So next slide. Sure. Oh, sure. So on the slide, any pictures that you see in this presentation, these are students that are actually here right now studying from other parts of the world in southern New Brunswick. So they look very happy to be here. And about our students, so they live with a homestay when they come here. A homestay is a host, so it can be anyone, a single person, a retiree, a family, a couple. It doesn't matter. They have to have a criminal record check, and then we go and look at their home to make sure it's suitable for the student, and do all those different kind of things with an application and stuff. So we do, but as for being a single person or a family, it can be either. So the students attend our public schools, and they volunteer throughout the community and also get involved in extracurricular activities. So we try to give them the best Canadian experience as possible. So we take them curling, we take them whale watching, skiing, a lot of things that a lot of these kids have never done before. Some of them have never put skates on before, and so they have lots of fun while they're in Canada. Okay, next slide. Okay, so Canada is actually one of the world's most popular destinations for international students. And presently in southern New Brunswick alone, we have 224 students. And right now they come from 22 different countries. Now we take them from many other countries, but right now in southern New Brunswick, we have 22. And so Turkey, Switzerland, Spain, Mexico, Japan, and so forth. I didn't list them all there, but some of them. And this is actually our class, our students from Harborview High School, these students, and they have a pretty big group. So having international students in our community. So we wanted to be able to share what the positives are to having them here. So they increase our immigration and our population. Next slide. And they teach our communities and our schools about other cultures, people, languages, and we become more diverse. And I believe that New Brunswick has, over the last 20, 30 years, has become a lot more diverse when I was a kid. And a lot of our children, they're not going to be able to go to these countries like Spain and Switzerland and Thailand, but they're learning about them from having these kids in their schools and in their communities. They're learning about their languages. They're learning about what they eat, how their cultures differ. I always find it very interesting when we have Halloween or Christmas. It's just amazing to see. They've never seen some of the things that we do before. Like, it's like their first time carving a pumpkin. Or we took a group of them to Ontario and took them to Niagara Falls, and in the bus going to the falls was just amazing to hear all the ahs and oohs and ahs, because they had never seen anything like that before. So it's really an amazing program. Okay, so having international students in our communities contribute to our education system financially and culturally. So I already talked about culturally, but financially, there's a certain amount per student that goes to our local schools. So they can decide as a school how to spend that money. So do you want to further? Usually Debbie steps in for this part for me.
All I would say is that each student that comes into New Brunswick brings about $25,000 as a starting point, and the larger portion of that money goes directly to our schools. So it's not the money that's already designated for books and whatever else that might be required in a day in a school, in the life of a school. But this would be funds that they could use for maybe, I really think that bus was bought because of the funds that they had over time at St. Stephen High School from international students. So there's monies that are available to the school that can be used in various ways that wouldn't be in the normal context of provincial funding for each section of an education system. So that's the money that they bring into on the top level, but then there's going to the movies, there's going to the Garcelon Center, getting a membership here, going to restaurants, being a part of the community. All of these pieces add up to a very, very interesting funding for your community at large.
Yeah, so and depending how many students are in your school, it depends how much money goes to the school. Right now, currently in St. Stephen High, we have 20 students from our program, and from, I believe, from 5 different countries. So next slide. So having international students, Debbie just touched on this, it boosts our economy. So they spend money when they come here. They buy souvenirs, they buy gifts, they love to shop because there's stores here that they don't have. Unbelievable to think there's stores in New Brunswick that they've never seen before. They go out to eat. Their families come to visit here, and their families spend money here. So their families, some of them come for Christmas or for March break, and that in turn brings more jobs to our communities. And we already talked about that. So next slide. And some of them actually come here and go to college or university here. We're actually getting in the process of going to a bunch of different colleges and universities to take them, to encourage them to do that. May 4th and 5th, we're taking them on a tour to see these colleges and universities, and hopefully some of them will choose to stay here. A lot of them do, and some of them even immigrate here with their families. So this is why we're here today, because we want your help. We want the community's help. We want your help. Our program will not survive if we don't have homestays, if we don't have people to host them and homes for them to stay while they're here. Some of them stay for 8 weeks. Some of them stay for 1 semester. Or 2 semesters. And so currently we have 120 homes in southern New Brunswick, so from Sussex to St. Stephen's right now. And we are always ongoing looking for people because we need respite care, like if a parent goes away, or, you know, we need places for these students to go. So next slide. So how can we do that? How can we get more people to know to be homestays? Well, more people need to know about us. So in a lot of cases, people don't. We actually were in Hampton yesterday in front of their council, and a few of them didn't even know about our program at all. Actually, I'm just curious. Can you raise your hand if you knew about our program? You did. Okay, you're doing better than Hamptons. Very good. But that is really what we need to do. We need people to know about us so that we're not always in a big rush to find homes, but yet they'll come to us. So next slide. Okay, so this is just an example of one of our ads. You've probably seen it on Facebook. I tend to plaster Facebook. And so ways that we can get more homestays is having more people talking about us, more businesses knowing about us. We were hoping maybe some communities will post a welcome sign to students, welcoming them, not necessarily saying hosts needed or looking for hosts, but just making the students feel more welcome, allowing the communities to know that they're here, displaying brochures in public areas on information stands. Next slide. Displaying our graphics such as this. This is one we made. This is actually a homestay. She has retired now, but she did it for many years and took in many students, and not at the same time, but you can only have up to 3. So so we made this graphic with a quote from her. And so we display different graphics like this on public social media accounts, websites, and if you could do that for us, that would also be very helpful. And also inviting us to events where our kids can be seen in the public, in community events where people can know that they exist. We have actually, I don't know if you've seen them, but right now we have these blue sweatshirts. They're very bright, and we pretty much make our kids wear them every time we go anywhere so that people know who they are. And they have a great big red leaf on the front, and they say AEI. So I don't know if any of you have seen those, but so yeah, just so if we were to go to a community event, we'd probably tell them to wear those so that people know that they're here. And the more people see them, even if it was a cleanup event or anything that you have going on in your community, and you're able to invite us and let us know so we can get involved. And I think that might be it. That's it. So I'll give it to Debbie, and then if you have anything to add.
So that's basically our PowerPoint, and really our purpose tonight was just to say hello and to let you know that we appreciate the time that you've given us, and to also let you know that the students that are in our communities in St. Stephen, they're very happy to be here. And one of the selling factors of St. Stephen is that the USA is just there. So that's a big point for young people as well. So if you have any questions for us, we have a really good relationship with Krista Amos at the high school. And I think she's going to start using the sign out front to promote the idea that we have international students. But if there's any other ideas that you would have, we would surely like to hear them and be pleased to try and put them into play. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Is any questions or comments from council?
I have a comment. My mom used to work for AEI, and my aunt did as well. So we had the pleasure of hosting 14 over the years. So I will say that between us hosting and family members, and we had other cousins who also hosted, and sometimes at Christmas we would do the respite care, and we'd have like 6 or 7 students from different countries all at the table, and it was the most rich experience in the world. I would highly recommend it, and I found it interesting too. One of the students from Brazil had told me that when they were trying to decide where to come in Canada, that the coordinators in Brazil were like, New Brunswick has the highest rate of like the happiest students when they leave, and St. Stephen is one of the happiest populations of kids that leave. So it is true, like St. Stephen has a lot to offer in that way, and we're happy to have the students. And I do some work in the high schools, and they are very engaged out there, and they seem like they're having a blast. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And that's what we hear mostly, very positive from people about our program. So, and it's always hard to see them go. So it is. Hardest part of my job, I think. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now I'm done with the fun stuff. Let's move on to the 2023 municipal budget overview. So I'll get a mover and seconder to move into. Oh, that's okay. There we go. All right. Well, I'll start with you, Jeff, to introduce our budget.
Thank you, Your Worship. This will be a bit of a different style of presentation than we're used to. Obviously, because we'll get into how this budget came to be. But normally, I would be presenting this to council for approval in November, as opposed to just giving you a, hey, here it is discussion in April. So basically, the agenda for this presentation, just going through the highlights and some factual stuff about the budget overall, and then a couple of departmental specific notes that I wanted to make sure that council and the public was aware of as we move forward. For those that may not know, the team that worked on the budget was myself, Deputy CAO Morton, Mr. Tozer, Mr. Subner, who is unfortunately not available with us tonight as he's overseas dealing with some personal matters. And we have to give out a special shout out to our Assistant Treasurer, Frank Godso, and Don Fitzgerald, who was our transition facilitator appointed by the Governor of New Brunswick, who in the end is the one that recommended the budget to the minister, which was ultimately approved by the minister. So, budget development process this year, I'd say was unique because of municipal reform. Because the budgets pertain to an entity and council that wasn't in place, there were no councils to approve the municipal budgets. As such, the minister, upon recommendation of Mr. Fitzgerald in our case, is the one that approved the operating budgets for this calendar year. Our staff, we created draft budgets based largely on the past budgets of the town of St. Stephen, but through our facilitator, we were also able to get the budgets for the LSDs that have formed part of the municipal district. So it was a combination of looking at both those documents and making some plans going forward. GNB did issue guidance documents on what our shared services, mainly that related to fire, general government, recreation, some of those big ticket items, and we'll see how that plays out. They also divided us into 4 taxation subunits. So we have 1 municipality, 3 wards, 4 tax subunits. It's a convoluted list of maps that all come together to make this work. But it largely was based, in the opinion of the Government of New Brunswick staff, on levels of service available in different areas of the municipal district. That's how they tried to make things, put like things together, even if they weren't contiguous. We did do a draft budget was presented by myself and the facilitator to the advisory committee, the Municipal Reform Advisory Committee. As I say on the slide, it was at a very superficial level. Those of you that were on the committee know that. We didn't get into the details and the weeds. We weren't asked to or told or allowed to by the facilitator. After a few back and forths with the government departments, we were in a position that the facilitator was able to recommend the draft budget to the minister, and we did finally get that so that we could, so basically pay bills starting January 1st of this year. So some of the key highlights. Big one for our area, tax rate changes. You'll see the 4 listed areas on the screen are the 4 taxation subunits, how the government divided us into taxation subunits. We were able to decrease the tax rates across the board for the entire municipal district. To the best of my knowledge, we are the only municipal entity in the province of New Brunswick that was able to achieve that for 2023. It was of such significance that departmental representation came back and criticized and analyzed a lot of our numbers several times before we were able to get the recommendation to the minister. Because of what I'm sure everybody saw that was going on in the rural areas across the province with huge taxation increases. And we were an anomaly, so they really wanted to take a good look at what we had done. The budget was built on a couple of mandated philosophies: pay for what you get. So you'll see in the coming slides things like the rural areas are not in our transportation budget, because in roads, sidewalks, that kind of stuff, we don't provide that service in the rural areas right now, so they don't pay for that part of the budget. And pay for what you owe. So any debts accrued that were still with the town of St. Stephen when amalgamation happened, we have to keep the cost of paying back those debts inside what is essentially Ward 2 and also St. Stephen Urban in the taxation lingo. Those taxpayers, when we formulate their tax rate, they're the ones that are picking up the tabs for anything for that debt that came into the marriage, you could say. And there's a few things on the rural side as well. There's some fire truck liabilities and things like that for Oak Bay, and a few costs and debts that were being repaid by the LSD taxpayers. The St. Stephen Urban folks aren't. That doesn't fall into their category, and it stays with the people that had those arrangements. So we had to divvy up a bunch of stuff and try and keep things straight. And poor Mr. Tozer is the keeper of all the columns of different spreadsheets that tries to keep that straight for us. I'm happy to say that we were able to, even with the decreases in the tax rates, add $200,000 to the general capital reserve, which those councillors that have worked with me before, you know that I'm big on putting money into the reserves and saving for the next project or saving for the next rainy day. So really happy to be able to do that. We are also faced with a bunch of increased costs to the Regional Service Commission because they got, as you know, they got a bunch of extra mandates thrust upon them as part of municipal reform. We don't really get to negotiate with them what we pay. They requisition money based on their budget. And so we had a bunch of costs that went up significantly throughout the budget in different areas of responsibility. We were able to accommodate those increased costs and still hit our decreased tax rates. So a lot of work went into trying to find the right formula of give and take across the board in order to make that happen, and very proud of my team for being able to pull off what they did. So just a basic graph here of where our revenue sources are. 63% of our revenue comes from taxation of property, 50% from other transfers, 14% from unconditional grants. So you're looking at 77% is either tax or what is our unconditional grant from the government of New Brunswick. Very little revenue from other sources. That is typical and characteristic of municipal government in New Brunswick and municipal government in Canada. Municipalities, they rely on the tax base and they rely on assessments to create the revenue. There is some commitments from GNB to give us more revenue generating opportunities as the next phases of municipal reform come, and we're looking forward to that because we're always trying to offset the property taxes if we can. A closer look at the taxes alone and where the taxes come from. This is just broken down by the taxing areas. So St. Stephen Urban is picking up, generates 80% of the total taxation coming in, with the rural areas being significantly smaller, which it makes sense. The assessment base is actually fairly balanced for us between urban and rural, but again, the service delivery side is largely focused around the urban core. And because you pay for what you get under the guidelines, this is a natural result of that. Where we spend the money. Transportation, 20, protective services. Big thing about protective services, before my colleague to my right gets lynched, the great majority of that number is Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is outside of our control, and obviously has gone up and is going to probably continue to go up, and we're all awaiting the exact numbers of the retro pay impacts, although we believe that the government has mitigated that on our behalf. General government, which is essentially administration and council, is 12%. Recreation and culture, which is this facility, it's the parks, it's the events, it's all the fun, soft services we provide, is about 23, about a quarter of our budget goes into those services. So that's just a quick overview of where we're going to look at some of these areas in a little bit more detail. I know one of the big things with amalgamation is, again, who is paying for what. So I tried to give you a graphic representation of the different budget areas here across the board. The light green is St. Stephen Urban, or we can call it Ward 2. As you can see, they're picking up the great majority of everything. And then much smaller for the rural areas. Policing is a little bit, the rurals have a bit of bigger share there, but that's just the numbers as they came from Justice and Public Safety, how they've divvied up the LSD costs and sent them back to us. So
just mention that the rural does pay 41 or 2 cents of their tax rate to their road.
41 cents for transportation, but that's so that goes directly to GNB, and for GNB to fund the road maintenance service for the rural areas. Yes. So yeah, just a quick peek at how that lays out. So okay, inside general government, here we go. We've got council, administrative staff, legal, our administrative overhead, keeping the lights on around here, and doing the audit of the main sections. Normally, we present to council when we're building the budget last year versus this year. Obviously, the comparator is not perfect because last year was Town of St. Stephen, and now we're the MD, and things have changed. But I still wanted to show it as a comparative mark, as to show what we've done. Because from an operational point of view, we haven't changed that a lot from the town to the MD, largely because we're not providing a number of services in the rural area. So we had a total change of $321,667 inside general government. And then I tried to just lay out in the box there the key increases that we did find. So obviously there was a significant increase to the counselor honorariums. We added more counsel, and with that comes the extra cost for, conferences and things like that. So that all gets rolled in there. Administrative staff, cost of the assessment has gone up, largely because we're now getting charged for a much larger area for the assessment services that GMB provides. Liability insurance, that is a problem for every municipality across Canada right now. Insurance is going crazy as far as the premium rates, and we're all trying to find a better solution to that. Audit is based on a contracted service that's provided. And computer upgrades, we had a few computer upgrades that were required for some of our tech in the administration. So that were the key changes in there. Protective services, so we're looking at policing, fire, bylaw enforcement, building inspection, animal control, and crossing guards are the major sections inside protective services. So we're up $1.2 million in this area, but you'll see a lot of it deals with policing if you look at those numbers in the box. And of course we had some increase to our dispatching costs for fire protection. That's assessment based. It's a calculation based on a total assessment for the municipality, and of course our assessment went significantly up when we pulled into rural areas. And we are paying for rural services that come in to help cover some of our area. So mainly Western Charlotte coming down on the west side, which is a significant cost and something that I think the chief and I are going to be talking to council about in the future as to whether that's the best approach to the longevity for the fire service moving forward. The transportation services, so of course we have some administrative costs, general equipment, workshop, roadway services, storm sewers, traffic services, airport. Not a huge change in this section. Big ones, of course, that we can expect it is fuel for all the equipment. We know what fuel prices have done of late. The electricity, again, that's been going up on a regular basis with NB Power, getting increases to the rates. And what I try to remind council, usually when we're building the budget, is if you think about in your own home, are you paying less for fuel? Are you paying less for power? Are you paying? And generally, people realize, no, I'm not. And then you just think of the quantities of those things that the municipality buys, and it ends up being a very big number. And those 6-7% increases are significant on a very large budget. So given all the changes, actually, I think that we probably haven't done too bad in that section of our budget as far as the total increase. Environmental health is always kind of an interesting mislabel. That's a GNB title for when we have to send numbers up there. I don't think most people would think of landfills, waste collection, and recycling as environmental health, but that's how it's coded. So realistically, we're up $372,000 in this area, pretty much all related to us budgeting for rural waste collection. And glad we did, because we weren't really sure how the government was going to handle waste collection in the rural areas. And on Friday, the deputy minister sent out a memo confirming our suspicion that we will start getting invoices quite quickly for the services that are being provided. They're going to keep the contracts in place with the vendors until they're completed, and so during the next year and a half or so, we'll just get a quarterly invoice from GNB for our portion of it. Same goes for what else we got in there? Animal control and things like that, where they already had contracts in the rural areas. We're just going to get invoices for those services now. So we did go through the LSD budgets as the best indicator we had of what was being charged to those areas, and use those, extrapolate those numbers to create a budget for that. So despite the fact that it's something we haven't paid for, we did expect it and we did budget for it. So we're hoping that we at least got close when the numbers come in. Oh.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
On the areas where they actually, on the new contracts, are they going to change the routes? Because right now they overlap, so it's hard to weigh the garbage and tell really what the tipping fees are. They're all mixed in.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. They weren't very clear on how they're going to be doing the calculations. Hopefully when they send an invoice, they'll have more information behind it. And then when the contracts end, it'll become a municipal service, and we will have to design the routes and create a system that works for us, which will be a new challenge for our staff. Yep.
I'll just kind of tag on to that. So it might not be a year to get through some of these contracts. We might have to.
Some of them have a year and a half, 2 years left on them. And yeah, the memo from the deputy minister said they're just going to, rather than break contracts and have the costs that are related to that, they're just going to invoice us for our share. So it'll just be keeping an eye on the math when it comes in. And you know, the guys on this side of the table are glad we have Mr. Tozer, because he makes sure all the math makes sense and tells us when it doesn't. So between him and Mr. Godso, I'm sure they'll be going over it with a fine-tooth comb when those bills come in before they get paid. So environmental development, again, another GNB term. This is where we find planning, economic development, leased property expenses. So we're talking about buildings that we lease out and we play landlord for. Tourism comes in here, and for some odd reason, the Christmas decorations around town and stuff ends up in this category. Just the way GMB set up spread their sheets. So we talked about some of the increased costs from the RSC. Regionalization services went up by 40,000. The RSC Economic Development, which is a new service for them, it's new to our budget. That's 35. Tourism, another new mandate for the RSC. That's another almost 35. Maintenance on rental property is an increase of 20,000 over previous town budgets. If we're going to be brutally honest with ourselves, we haven't been budgeting properly to maintain our own facilities that we're renting out. And we knew that there's some work coming. One of the main buildings we rent out is just across the parking lot. It's the Five Kings restaurant, and it needs some work on the windows and things like that we know that are coming due. We've put a fair amount of money over the years into it, but we need a little bit more there. So, but the great majority of the increases in this area relate to the RSC mandates and us being requisitioned for those funds. Mm-hmm.
What are regionalization services? Just what falls into that category? Because a lot of the other stuff, like the tourism and economic development, are very clear. But what are regionalization services? Just sounds broad. What's that encompass?
I couldn't tell you right off the top.
It's probably what was formerly in the RSC budgets that came just to the town before these mandated services were added. Is that probably?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of their overhead, a lot of like things that aren't specifically assigned. Because you'll see elsewhere, like our contract for planning through RSC is in a different section. Yes. Like there's.
So that's probably just what used to come through the budget anyway. Just didn't have a specific name. Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarifying. Appreciate it.
Recreation culture, as I said, this is about a quarter of our total expenditure, so this is a big section. Administration, as most departments have. Parks, playgrounds, pools, special community events, the operation of the Garceland Civic Center, regional recreation cost share, which is one of the RSC mandates, well, we can talk a little bit about, and our contributions to the library are also in this section. So here we're seeing about a $460,000 increase overall. One, we had some salary lines in there where we were constantly ending up over budget, and it's just because we weren't accounting for it properly inside our own system. And so we had to we had to reallocate some costs from other areas and some overtime stuff because we just weren't accurate for our support staff. So we fixed that problem this year. There's a half-time position that was accounted for in here. We elevated one lifeguard. As you know, you've heard Mr. Sumner go on and on about lifeguards are very difficult to get. One of our coping mechanisms was to take one of our part-time lifeguards, elevate them to a full-time status, which has been working really well. We are hit over the last little while with 3 minimum wage increases that we weren't told about in advance. And at least the one this year we knew about on April 1st. So that drove some of the budget, especially in this section. In this section, a lot of our student staff and whatnot are in recreation services. While we don't pay minimum wage, we do look at our lowest rates and adjust our student rates to stay above minimum wage to try and keep our recruitment pool coming in. So that shifted our costs up. And the recreational cost share increase. So this is the cost sharing program for RSC 10, which is actually being held up as an example to the other RSCs on how to handle this. We just did it first, where the municipalities pay into a big pot at the RSC, and then it gets redistributed back out to the municipalities based on what services you're providing. And do you have a regional center, such as the GCC, and things like that. It was 2 cents on the assessment based on the areas. With us growing and pulling in a lot of that rural area, we now become responsible for paying that share of the rural area into the system. We do get some money back, and it ends up being a net plus for us on a revenue. We generate revenue through this program, but that's why there's probably the most significant hit in this area is the fact that we're now responsible to pay in and before we get back for a bigger area. I believe so. I don't believe there's going to be any changes to the program as it had existed before. I think it might be being looked at, but I don't know 100%.
So yeah, so what's in our district? It's just a wash because you're just giving money and getting it back. Is it? But then we're still keeping the ones that are outside our district in that catchment area. That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. Can I bring you back to the Christmas decorations? That one got me there. I don't remember that one.
We've always funded, like we've always.
Yeah, but you said the RSC's doing it.
No. It's just in this section.
Oh, it's in this section. Okay. No, forget. Okay, that didn't make. That's why it didn't make sense.
Environmental development, which again is another weird name for things, but.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I thought.
Why it's not with all the other community services stuff, I don't know, but that's it's a specific line in GNB's forms that we have to put it there.
There was one on RSC recreational development. What is that going to involve? I'm just trying to think of an example of trails outside of there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be the biggest one, but.
Nature park or what?
Well, the trails that they're working on, that Sherry is working on, that would be tying all that together. Yeah.
Tourism as well.
Yeah.
Tourism, recreation, and the Regional Service Commission. Yeah, Sherry will be taking care of that.
Yeah, that's in its infancy right now. It's just they're just getting their feet on the ground. I know they just got some appointments done for committee members for those areas and stuff. So we'll learn more as we go, I think.
Just trying to think of examples of what would take up. Okay, thanks.
And working with the other communities in our region too. That the tourism part would tie us all together. Yeah.
Recreation part wasn't yours. Yeah. Okay.
So then the last section is fiscal services, which is probably the most boring, but a lot of implications here. It's actually a decrease in the costs that we're taking on this year. Mainly, we had some principal repayment. That number's gone down as we've been paying some stuff off. We didn't do a transfer to the capital fund. The town of St. Stephen did last year to pay for some capital expenses that we didn't budget for this year. Increase to the general capital reserve more than we did the previous year. And as I said, there's a pay your own debts when you come into the marriage, and so we have one capital lease for a fire truck at the Oak Bay Station, which has a couple of years left on it. Council actually just approved the sublease arrangement for that not long ago, if you recall. So that's this ebbs and flows based on what's going on with borrowing and what we're doing with our reserve transactions in and out. So. Less of an indicator of trending here on a year-to-year basis, but it's important to show. So that's the capital budget, or the operating budget for the town. The other big budget that we operate, again, only in the urban area, is the utility. As you can imagine, how utility operates, it's sales service. It's charging for water and sewer. Not much else goes in there as far as revenue. Expenditures, 48% on the water side, 31% on the sewer side, 21% in fiscal services, which there is significant borrowing and things that go on for those works. Just a closer look at our sales. where the money's coming from. Residential water, 23%, industrial water, 17%, sewer, 41%. So it's a big part of what we're being charged. This entire scenario and how we have this designed, have this set up, has been under review by consultants recently, and we're working on getting a committee of the whole date for them to present their findings and some recommended options on different pricing structures and things related to this specific scenario. So you're going to learn a lot more detail, a lot more information on how the utility works, and specifically how it funds itself, or should be funding itself in the next little bit. So the water supply side, obviously we have administration, purification and treatment, transmission and distribution, the source of supply, and billing and collection. Come on, wake up. There we go. So we have a slight decrease in the budget actually this year. Again, we did a large purchase for water meters previously that we're not obviously don't need to buy this year. That's the big decrease here. Is just some capital that we bought previously for some of the that's related to some meter reading upgrades and things that we're working on to become less labor intensive in our meter reading side of things, and going to radio read technologies slowly over time as we get them installed. Yes.
Investment.
And that was a program started by the Town of St. Stephen Council a number of years ago. No, sir.
During this water conversation, can we get a handle sometime in the near future on the water bills and the lack of paying them? I think that should be changed. I think I mentioned it to you before, that the process maybe should be changed because it's too lengthy now. So do you think we could work on that so we can get some of the debt that's owed to us in?
Yep, there's a number of issues there, and we've known that for years. We worked on it. Some we've had success in some areas, and others we've had less success. And some of it is, we have to get. I think we need to get a little bit more stringent upon how much leeway we allow citizens to have before we go and just turn the valve. Get a little tougher in that regard. No one likes turning the valve off, but it is, as much as it's a social necessity, it's also a business, and we have to make sure that we're taking care of the business side as well. So I point heard. Okay. So on the sewer side, very similar. We have the collection system. We have treatment and disposal, and billing and collection. Not much change here at all. One of the goals that the transition facilitator had set for us was, when it comes to the utilities, if at all possible, keep the same budget as last time, because as those on the advisory committee will recall, just getting the operating budgets in before the deadline was tough. And we didn't want to have to really get into arguments and stuff around the utility side. So we tried to keep things as similar as possible. Again, fuel and electrical, two biggest things here. Obviously, we've talked about it in the past little while. The sewer side, we had the issue at the lagoons that we're still working on that with the insurance company and what's needed into the future, and making sure that we're going to be set up for that. That'll be on some capital discussions that we'll be having probably later in the year as those things come together. And given recent events, we'll be talking about capital investments on the water source supply as well. That report just came in from the engineers with the short, medium, long-term recommendations. So we're looking at that. We actually just shared that with Public Health today. So they're keeping on top of it as well. But we'll have lots of conversations about utility over the next little while, because it's going to be some significant expenditures going that need to be planned for.
To new councilors too, the other thing we're doing is water and sewer separation, and so we're not treating stormwater. So that'll help electricity costs and handling and chemical treatment and all that stuff.
It's over the last, the 5 years I've been here for sure, and it started before I got here. So yeah. Again, fiscal services. Again, it's you'll see total change $24,000. Not a whole heck of a lot here. Mostly just related to how we're the debt payments and things like that. And that's pretty much it for that. One thing we're going to be doing in the next little bit, we were just this week, or sorry, last week, updating all of our reserve fund schedules and looking at how we're going to be handling that. Because again, the reserve funds that were put aside by the town of St. Stephen, as you can basically see those as restricted funds, that their expenditures need to be done inside the urban, because it was their money that we're holding on to. As we start contributing to more reserves, and then we build like the 2024 budget, we're going to start looking at what we're going to do with the MD side of the reserves and how we're going to allocate those funds. So we've cleaned up some old notes that have been 20 years in the making in the treasurer's notebook around why money got put in there and whether the projects had been completed, things like that, to just make sure we know how much money we can tell you that we have opened up and available and not committed to things already. And then we can turn around and we can take a look at the priority list, go over what we think the priority list is with you folks, see if you concur, and then put those priorities against the funds that are in the bank account and make a multi-year plan of how we're going to start addressing some of our big capital needs going forward. But that'll be another process, another discussion. So yeah, with that, Tim, did you have anything to add? Or did I cover it okay?
No, good job. Good job.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
We're moving into another agenda. What's the actual budget number for the RCMP?
2.2, just a hair over 2.2 million is the RCMP for 2023. I noted the retroactive costs that are hitting the press right now, and a lot of some of the mayors out Sussex Way were in the media last night and things. I have been working with the Justice and Public Safety for some time on discussing the RCMP costing, and one of the things that JPS has been doing for like the last 5 years is they have been assuming that this was coming, and that when they've been requisitioning our funds, have been overcharging, we'll call it, to create a mitigation fund for what's happening today, which is these costs being downloaded back to the municipalities, which we know is happening. And it was a nice piece of forethought from our friends at GNB to be creating the mitigation fund from everybody. I contacted my contact this morning to see if I could get an actual number for you guys of what the implications are for the MD. The person in charge said they have the number, they have the retroactive costs for the province, but they haven't broken it down by municipality yet, which of course with reform is, I'm sure they have a whole bunch of spreadsheets that are no longer useful to them anymore. And so they're working on that, and they're going to share that information to the associations like the UMNB as they have it prepared, and then we'll get that through there. But they had reconfirmed to me yet again that the mitigation fund was put in place, was funded, and they're expecting, in her words, the implications to be minimal. So that she feels that they have a good mitigation fund there to make sure that municipalities are not going to get hit too hard. So, it's not often I'll say really great things about my friends at GNB, but they've done better on this front than many of the provinces have in handling this cost coming in. So, kudos to them for that, and thank you.
Jeff,
it basically says 2.3 million for 2023. What was can you recall what the last previous 22 and 21 would have been?
Town of St. Stephen in and of itself was about 1.5, 1.7, I think might have been, right in that ballpark. Yeah.
I think it was not quite 1.5, but anyways, it's in, yeah.
So the 2.3 is for
2.2.
2.2. I'm sorry. 2.2 is for the municipal district of St. Stephen now.
2.2 is municipal district of St. Stephen. So we went up by about $1 million.
This was for 1.2. Okay, and that would be for what? That would be for just the town of St. Stephen.
That was our cost. So you're looking at $1 million increase between the taking on the costs that were previously allocated to the rurals, plus the normal increase that happens every year.
Finance. This 2.3 versus 1.2, is that basically the equivalent, same number of officers that will be covering both rural and urban? I call urban the town itself. Or does that mean that we're getting more money to cover more territory?
No.
No, it's the same. We're paying the same bodies. We're just paying for more of them because we have to pick up the costs associated with the rurals. Correct.
The salary or whatever.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
So basically, with the combination of the two wards that they were paying independently for RCMP, it's just collectively now come to the town.
Correct.
So yeah, so LSD St. David was paying 500 and something thousand anyways, and I imagine Ward 1 was doing the same. So.
Yeah, there was a bunch of LSDs too. Now they're kind of combined into the ward, but yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and then actually, when they give us the police numbers for 2023, it was by taxing area. Again, they don't line up with the wards, unfortunately, but even though we've actually wanted them to, but we did get it by taxing authority broken down. So I do have those numbers. If any councilor's interested in that kind of detail, I can chat to you. No problem.
Okay. Yeah, the other thing I would mention, where they did put away money for it, charged us money for it to get prepared for it. Don't forget, it is retroactive, so they were paying for what they thought it was going to be before they settled the contract, which they haven't done, which they're trying to do now. But so it's not really, I'm not saying we don't pay enough for policing, but I mean that's how they come up with the numbers. But
yeah, and the only person that I know that knows all the numbers right now for the province is saying they expect it to be a minimal impact. So I'll take her at her word until I see the bill.
If I remember, a region pays about $7 million, I believe, somewhere around that. Yeah, for the whole Regional Service Commission. Yeah. Okay. Anything further on?
So, does the RCMP, do they provide council usually with a breakdown of their budget? Like when Brian or Councillor Cornish? No. So we don't actually know exactly what that cost would cover in terms of even just not even number of bodies, but everything else that's kind of encompassed in their budget. We don't get a report on that.
Very complicated. It's not just bodies, because it depends on what you have for level of officers too, because those cost more or less. So it's very convoluted. You can't even figure it out. Go ahead.
Are some of those
Councilor.
details involved in the included in the quarterly report? I believe some of those breakdowns are how much was in the RCMP policing report. It comes out quarterly. I know we used to see some of those figures as far as breakdown at the RSC level. So I believe some of those details might be in those quarterly reports.
It would be really good as council to know how many officers are out there and kind of the breakdown of their costs of what we're looking at in our community, especially with how we've grown. So.
So are you basically saying cost of police cars, cost of officers, cost of break-ins, cost of abusive, whatever, like categories of where the money's actually pouring into? Yeah, I agree with you on that. It could be interesting.
Like to know beyond the officers, like how much time is being committed to the actual crimes that are happening in our community, and has there been a general increase or decrease? Or I think it would just help us inform our decisions moving forward if we actually knew a breakdown of what was going on from them.
Report where the work is. They do divide that up per call or.
In that budget, that 2.23, now that does not include the building that we provide them and the.
No, that's under the lease properties. So they pay us. Nah.
Well,
Sorry, that's not like recreation. Well,
I mean, we just renegotiated their lease, and they were good. They agreed to a healthy increase based on inflationary costs that we're all seeing, but their requirements as a tenant have gone up over the last number of years. So you're seeing more costs being put into the building over the last number of years to try to keep them placated, if not satisfied.
Plowing and all that for them, don't we? And like clean carpets and everything else in there for them. So we do everything in that building pretty well for the tenant, right?
Just other questions, Mayor? Highway patrol. We have a federal highway going across in front of us. How is that broken down? Like, do our police stop at the boundary at St. Andrews Cutoff, or do they go down towards St. George? Like, how is that policing paid for, like between St. George, ourselves, Musquash, etc.? Because there's probably one to X number of police cars out there. Is that part of this policing itself? Do we pay for that also?
I assume so. I don't see, we don't get those kind of breakdowns when they send us the requisition. But the policing for the highway in this area would be shared between ourselves and Eastern Charlotte. And
policing in general is shared.
Yeah.
You know, the truth. The officers that you see in St. Stephen, you might see in St. George tomorrow, or in McAdam. Like they're on the move.
That's one of the issues. I had an issue with some of the. I had an incident this weekend, and talked to the officer who was sitting in my living room, and I asked him. I said I was on council, and we got talking, and he said, "Well, put it this way," he said, "There's 4 officers on duty tonight on Saturday night between Harvey and Penfield." And I said, "I'm in your living room, and there's another officer in your mother-in-law's living room in Deer Island." So that leaves, so there's 2 between those 2 points in our, and that's concerning, right? So
the policing contract, does that actually exist? The paperwork to say what the policing contract is, as to what we are exactly paying our $2.3 million for? I know it's all negotiated by the province, and the formula is something that most people can. But it'd be nice to be able for the councillors to just understand, these are the terms that they're supposed to be, and the services they're supposed to be providing as to what Emily's asking for. Does that exist?
I have not seen it in my time here, but I'll happily request it of my contact at JPS and see how she responds.
I'll ask tomorrow night. There's a policing meeting out there tomorrow night, so you ask and I'll ask.
Yeah. Yeah, David? Yeah.
David Whittingham. In the environmental development section of the budget, there's a tourism section there, and within that, there's a projected charge to the municipality, our municipal district, around almost $35,000 to the Regional Service Commission. I'm just wondering if council has considered bringing in a bylaw to enable a tourism levy system similar to St. Andrews. Their figure, looking at their last town council meeting, they were discussing this type of thing. I think they're looking at a 3.5% charge on accommodations like hotels, motels, Airbnbs, and that would just thinking about, but that would allow that charge for tourism, which benefits accommodations. It benefits everybody in the community, but particularly benefits accommodations, tourism promotion. That whether that's an avenue, a revenue source through a levy would pay, for instance, that fee that the our Regional Service Commission is going to charge to our municipal district. It's just a thought. Okay.
I have a couple of points, one on transportation and the other on policing, protective services. And if I understand things correctly, protective services is going up slightly over $1 million from 22 to 23. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I dealt with the RCMP and policing in this area for about 34 years. I dealt with the town police, who I have high regard for when they were policing in this area. I was present during the transition of the town of St. Stephen Police to the RCMP. The RCMP at that time were saying that we're going to give better protection than the town police were providing you. That did not hold up. And I deal a lot with people out in public, and they stop and talk to me because as an ex-prosecutor, they want to sort of vent. And some of that venting has led me where I am here today. I've thought about it a lot when people talk to me. And they are quite frustrated. The citizens have lost faith in the RCMP's ability to police effectively in this area. Citizens have complained about the responses they get. Much of this is anecdotal. For example, one lady was accosted on one of the local streets in town. The RCMP officer that responded to her made her feel like, oh, you shouldn't worry about this. We know this guy. He's not a problem. He's got a drinking problem. We can handle it. There were two people present, two males one was attempting to drag her off the sidewalk to an area beside a house where the second male was. She was made to feel she was bothering the RCMP. They let her decide whether she should be laying charges or not. In the good old days, that person would have been before a judge ASAP and dealt with. They wouldn't put it upon a citizen to make that determination. That's a police officer's call. That tells me somebody's inexperienced. There are examples of lately a house was burned out in the country. An old man, 82 years old or so, was across the street, and it was for his, I guess because of him, it got reported. The police officer's response to him was, well, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you do something other than call? The RCMP lately have been sloughing off cases. They're not investigating them, and they're not bringing it to whoever's going to assess whether there's enough evidence to come to court. They handle it roadside, so to speak. And that tells me when they say, oh, our hands are tied, their hands are tied because they don't have enough police officers. Maybe it's as simple as that. But my prediction, and based upon what people are telling me, is that somebody's going to be hurt because the police are not protecting the citizens. And I believe the mentality of the RCMP right now is that they have low morale for much of what's been happening across the country and in Nova Scotia and the reports that come out, and the criticism that they get on a local basis. And it's not entirely their fault, but when they're asking for $1 million more, no?
I do want to correct. It's not $1 million more. Okay. We just took on more area. That $1 million was there. It's just $1 million more in our municipal district budget now. So it's the same. Okay. Yeah. But there is an increase coming.
Whatever the number might be, consider whether you're getting bang for the buck. My other issue is transportation. I'm just wondering whether there is anybody putting forth a proposition for maintenance of streets in town. Is there something going on, or if nothing's going on, people would like to know that too, to put money in their budget for car repairs and things like that. That's my only points. Thank you.
So your first topic, policing, I mean, there's a whole lot of fluid things going on there why the cost is more. And it's not just the police and being shorthanded. It's, well, one of the places you used to be in, the courthouse, being in St. John, that takes boots off the ground. No, I'm not sitting here making excuses. I'm just saying that's the stuff that it's not just the police, it's the whole.
If that's the case, then put more boots on the ground, whatever it's going to take. I mean, that's a given now. They took the court away from here. So let's do an accounting of what hole that has left us in and fill the gap.
On the agenda, actually. Yeah. No, but your comments are very well taken because we're all feeling it. It's it is a struggle. But
just before we started, Chipman, want to mention that something that may have taken place today?
What's that?
them dropping the RCMP and going to private service.
I never said
Minto?
anything about dropping. Oh, Minto. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's it. I just read that in the Telegraph Journal. That's just, they're talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, just basically we were talking before that. Apparently Minto was talking about it. It's dropping the RCMP and going back to their own police force. So that could be starting a trend.
Yes, but
anyway,
yeah,
it's not.
That's a whole lot of discussion for that, and it's a different time and a different lay of the land. Like I was just saying, you know, the lay of the land has changed. The community has changed greatly as well too. The police has changed. Councilor Rodas?
Thanks, Randy, for your comments. I will say too that I have also had a lot of anecdotal reports. I had one 17-year-old youth I was supporting who had like some criminal issues and was looking at actually potentially pursuing social work, which you would require a clear criminal record check to do your practicum, and he didn't really even understand the charges. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't have an officer he could communicate with, and that was really challenging to hear, that there's this 17-year-old youth who doesn't really know the process. So I do think things are getting lost there as well in terms of just not taking as much responsibility for kind of the laying charges and things like that. When a 17-year-old becomes, you know, has a criminal charge involved in their situation, then they need to fully understand it, right? But I will share another thing too. Your worship, what you were talking about how there's so many different layers. Scott McKenzie was in our unsheltered meeting the other day and shared that they had 2 police officers locally who found someone who was, you know, really in distress and mentally unwell, and took them actually straight to the regional, sat for hours in the waiting room, got in to finally see the doctor, and the doctor said to them, "This is not mental health, this is substance use disorder." And the officer said, "Is this not the same thing?" And he said, "No, it's not." And they put him back in the car and brought him back, and they cannot lay charges because he wasn't doing anything criminal. However, it was severely disrupting the community. So that took a great deal of hours away. And when we're talking about maybe only 4 officers in the area, like that would be 2 officers. So I do feel there are a lot of layers, but I would agree that I've heard quite a few anecdotal stories about when the responses are happening, just minimizing the situations, which I think is fueling the community's anger and upset right now. So I do want to thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I think it's totally valid, and people are frustrated.
So, yeah, Councilor Eastman.
I was in a meeting in Halifax last weekend, and we had a police officer in our group that was talking about this whole thing. The morale of the RCMP is so low right now that they're not even going to celebrate their 150th anniversary. They have been told by National to low-key it as much as possible. So I mean, on the flip side of this, they're not doing well.
So yeah, so I will add. I was in conversations with our MLA today, and they budgeted $2 million to bring on 50 more officers. But for us to get one or a few of those officers, we need to have the data to show it. And that the data doesn't collect on Facebook. We got to call. I am working with them on how, I haven't got fire on this yet, but how that call, because I know that call is painful. Like you're on hold and you're waiting because it's not a 911 call. But that call needs to get there so we can get added into that system so we can get a piece of those officers. But if there's a quicker way we could do that, I don't know what it's going to be. If it could be like a texting system or an email with I don't know. But we got to try to improve that because people just don't bother doing it, and we need to tally that stuff up as well. So, and share that with them because they need to have the information. And it also, just to be clear too, and I'm not telling anyone doesn't know, policing is reactive. We got to control the community so we're not policing it like that, and that involves other levels of government for social services and all those things to help and do their piece too, which they're working on. But again, it's painfully taking a long time, and I think they let the fire get too big. I can't disagree with that, but it's created all this, and we gotta do our part. That's all we can do, and that's why we got the next topic about municipal enforcement and what we can do, and there's a cost to it. So we got to discuss that and try to figure something out again and be reactive, and hopefully it's not a full-time thing. It gets to a point that we don't need it. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Islip.
Just 2 points. Yeah, it is painful to call that number because I was on 45 minutes the other day. But what we have to come back to transportation, your second point there is we were using gas tax money, I believe. Correct me if I'm not accurate on this because you guys dealt with this. A lot of times just gas tax money was given to the roads, and it was just something that happened way back when. And but we have put an item in the budget, haven't we, for streets? So we're starting to putting a little bit of funding for that specifically.
We're trying to. It's not the level that I would prefer, to be honest with you. An early draft of the 2023 budget had significantly more allocated to streets. Then there was a problem with the province of New Brunswick's toolkit that wiped it out because it had a misinformation cell in their spreadsheet. But we're working on. I mean, that's one of the reasons that we contribute to the capital reserve as much as we can. Unfortunately, in today's business, $1 million of road work doesn't go very far, and especially if it's a road that we have to do the underground on as well, because we're not, as you said, perhaps you said previously, we're not going to repave a road and then go and dig it up because to redo the water and sewer the next year. We don't want to do that. So where we have the older infrastructure, we're always doing the underground first. And that adds a whole bunch of costs. Once the underground has been updated, if we're just doing plain surfacing, we get a little bit better distance for our buck. But yes, sometime prior to my arrival, when gas tax first was given to the municipalities, there was a decision made in the town of St. Stephen. And again, an outsider just looking at the books, that what the municipality had previously funded through tax dollars was redirected to something else, and gas tax became the capital program. That was never the intent of gas tax. Gas tax was supposed to be a supplemental on top of, and at one point you actually had to prove that you were still spending your previous money. So we're trying to get back to a model where we're having more current year taxes going into capital projects. But honestly, it would take a relatively significant tax rate increase in order to do something that would even come close to what to really be noticeable in the community. Yeah. Which when we
we're not doing capital projects.
Yeah.
A couple of capital projects on the works now, they're going to be significant, but they take a lot of money.
They do.
Yeah.
We're trying to actually, I was just coordinating with our engineers to see if there's a couple little spots that I know have been problematic for a long time, to see if we can piggyback those onto the contract that's coming out for School Street, and whatnot, to see, because these are mainly resurfacing, and once you've already mobilized the crew for a big job, sometimes you get really good costing back for the small stuff. So we're trying to find the spots and the tactics to get some bang for the buck, to get more surfacing done. We know it's been neglected for a long period of time, and it's starting to come home to roost, and we have to not only get caught up, but the goal is to get caught up and get ahead of it a bit, so that we're constantly improving and not just, as you said with policing, constantly in reaction mode. We need to get into preventative mode more, and we need to work on that. But I think as this council works with us on 2024's budget priorities, I suspect that we're going to spend a long time talking about capital dollars and tax rates and what needs to happen in order to get things done.
And another issue was the King Street there, that wasn't the funding from the province reduced for?
Not reduced, nothing.
For 4 years that they used to give us every year.
Yeah, 2 years. I think we were knocked out of the running. So, yeah.
So that's another issue. Reduced our ability to effectively fix places that we used to fix before through that funding.
For us to have our own program.
Well, the
those programs come and go. I mean, politics is what they are. We know if the federal government happens to be in an election mode, they usually rain capital money down. Those are the times we have to be ready It's the old shovel-ready projects, right? And I've been working with the engineers to get to that point, because for the most part, the engineering doesn't go bad. So you can do it, sit it on the shelf, and when the writ drops and the money starts flowing out of Ottawa, you have your projects ready to go. And our engineers have been great about that, and we're doing more of that. But I do think that if we continue to rely on other levels of government solely to come to the table to make things work, we're just not going to keep up. We need to build our own program. And yes, it's going to take investments of significant amounts of dollars every year. But if we're ever going to have a chance of getting caught up on some of the stuff that is behind, it's going to be we're going to have to make some decisions. You guys are going to have to we get to make some recommendations. You guys get to make some decisions. And some of them might not be easy between competing priorities.
And I think that's well explained, and I think that a lot of frustration is misinformation, or not misinformation, just misinterpretation of a few things. That when we get some new sign, for instance, I have to explain on Facebook that that sign was given to us by the BIA. We've got a grant through a COA. That's not for potholes. You and I can apply for a heat pump grant, but we're not allowed to buy a fridge with it, and we're not allowed to pave our driveway. And I keep on trying to explain that, and there's a lot of frustration in that this money that we give here is not for that particular thing. We can't use it for that. And so we can't. So it's a lot of frustration comes from that, especially when you have to go and explain it, and it comes out a lot of times. You'll see it on Facebook of why not paving the roads or buying or employing a new police officer, but that's not the intent of those funds. So anyway, good explanation. Thanks.
Oh, okay, Councillor Harding here. Sorry.
Thank you. Before we move on, first of all, I want to say thank you to Jeff and Sean, Timmy, and Frank for the wonderful job that they have done in preparing the budget. And secondly, I want to make a comment about the RCMP. I think they have one terrible job. I mean, I think that day in, day out, they have to chase the same people around town. They have to put them in the police car, take them somewhere. Like, look at the resources that are being wasted. And like I said, having been a law enforcement officer for 31 years, and I'm not at that level, but I can understand the frustration of the police. I can understand why their morale would be down. So I know that we're going to move into this, into the last subject here, but I just want to say that the RCMP do the best they can. I was around on Sunday afternoon, and I saw 2 police cars parked down on Prince William Street, and I thought, yep, there we go, Sunday afternoon, Easter Sunday. So anyway, I want to tip my hat to the RCMP for the work they do.
I just kind of tag on to that. I was talking to John Williamson, our MP, as well, and him and his colleagues are working to get those laws a little more tougher. So, so just know it's work in progress. I mean, of course, he's got a fight in his hands too, because he's only one side of the government. But anyway, he is working for that. Sean.
One thing that Councillor Heislip has cited this example several times, but the Union Street job from West Street to the front of the fire station, 300 or 400 meters of road, $1.78 million. It's about $4,000 per meter if you have to do underground and above. Don't quote me on that number, but in my head, that puts it more or less into perspective.
And I'll put it a little different, because I asked what $1 million would be. It was 14 cents, so that would be 15, 16 cents extra on the tax rate per 100. So, which would be, yeah, $500–600 per household. Yeah, it's
10%.
No, but I mean that's just put in perspective. That's
increase in your taxes.
Councillor Corn?
You already said it, because Alan was almost afraid of me 2 or 3 years ago, because when I came out of Mayfield and drove up to by the fire station, that's where hell let loose. There was no road there. And then I come out now, and every day I see, I think I was close. It's $1.78 million, and I look up the street. One time I could throw a baseball that far. We're talking $2 million. But the thing is, it's the infrastructure that has to go in under that pavement. So I guess my only concern is I don't know. It depends on, I guess, what the condition of the infrastructure is, and being in business for 30 years, is whether or not some of that funding, I don't know how the government works either. Maybe it has to be based on internal properties under the ground. But some of these things, maybe it would be a mixed batch of saying, okay, we know that those pipes will last 5 years. They're not going to last 10. but we need to do some street work in order to get there. So I don't know what, I know, you folks, it's a catch-22, but.
Tell that to people, they just tore up the pavement on the Harbor Bridge. Yeah, just put down for a year. I mean, I get why they did it, they had to, but.
That usually costs
but
me a wheelbarrow per year. I really don't wanna talk
yeah,
about it.
anyway. It's, anyway, we could, go ahead, Councilor Rodas.
To you, just out of curiosity, who, I know we have a lot of citizens who identify the roads that are the most treacherous, but who actually identifies, as a new councillor, who identifies the roads? Would it be the engineers look at the roads that would, or would it be Sean? Or is it kind of a mixed bag?
There's a combination. We did an asset management plan a couple of years ago, which is a big document, and it's got a lot of math and a lot of looking at how old the road is, how quickly they depreciate, what kind of pipes are under there, what's their average lifespan, how old are they, which is probably where our biggest problem is. It's the age of the underground. I mean, we still have, I think we still have sections that are terracotta pipe, don't we?
We do.
Yeah, I mean, so you're
Over 100 years old.
And that's the honest truth. And it's one of the reasons that we'll say School Street, the one that we're just going to get ready to tender here, that we got the money for. One of the reasons it rose to the top of the priority list is because we also track where we get our breaks, right? And School Street, if you go down School Street, it's patch, because every one of those patches was a break that we had to go back in and do a repair and do a repair and do a repair. So we know the math tells us where our hot spots should be. We know our guys and the notes that they keep about where they've been working in our GIS system shows us where our on the ground day-to-day hot spots are. And then we can try to merge the two and say, okay, like where do our priorities lie? And it makes a better pitch when we're looking for grant money as well, when we have that data to back up the fact that, the pipe is 110 years old and it's, and we've had 18 breaks in the last 2 years or whatever it is. The governments like to see that homework behind these applications as well.
If there's mixed sewers in there,
Yes.
if they're collecting stormwater, there's government money to fix that. So your road gets fixed if you've got combined sewers. That's a higher priority because, like he said, they won't give you money for it if it isn't there, but if you've got combined sewers, here's some money. So you add what's left to fix the pavement on top, and that's how you get your project. So it's not just where do we need the pavement. We know we need pavement, but we can't necessarily get the money for it. We got to take the money where they'll give it to us, and that's where these programs come into play.
It's because you were spending too much water on the street coming out of there, weren't you?
Well, thank you for that. I think that information sharing helps, and for anyone who's watching this tonight, it's just helpful to understand how the decisions are made as well. So thank you.
Well, okay, all right. Well, no, this is a fun one we're going to go in here now. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about municipal enforcement and community safety. And Jeff, I'll let you start this off.
On the agenda, as we all have, we all know the challenges that we're facing with lack of police presence, or at least visibility at the very minimum, in the community, and trying to come up with ideas. And the great thing about Committee of the Whole is this is where the ideas come out. We don't make decisions, but we kick ideas around and we figure out which ones we want to take a closer look at. So I wanted to give council the opportunity to have that conversation. From my office, I've reached out to one potential service provider to, on an exploratory basis, to say, okay, you look at just the municipal enforcement side. Now, I'm not talking about policing per se, but municipal enforcement. We have one part-time bylaw enforcement officer here, who does not have a marked vehicle, who does, it's a different type of bylaw enforcement. I almost call it more of a compliance officer than a bylaw enforcement officer. It's the friendly face, and not everybody's all he wants to be friendly with, but but we try and get compliance rather than enforcement, and rather than preventative maintenance, preventative stuff. There are other organizations out there who can provide uniformed officers, marked cars, that do community patrolling, and will also do your bylaw enforcement as they're doing the community patrolling. So I called some colleagues that employ these types of services in New Brunswick. Got a strong recommendation from a colleague and made a call, and had a good video chat, and said, and basically they're like, yeah, we can provide services down in your neck of the woods, and what are you looking for? And that's the problem. This is the phase that I'm at. What are we looking for? Are we looking for, we as councils, we as the community, are we looking for somebody in a marked vehicle patrolling 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year? Because, I mean, if that is the goal, surely, obviously we can't do that with a part-time compliance officer, but we can have that service. But what's that going to cost? Because you're not going to do that with one guy. You're not going to do that with 3 guys. You're not going to do that with 4 guys. It's going to be
at least 5.
7 or 8 by the time you cover days off and vacations and sick days, and right, and a number of vehicles and a number of whatever. The ballpark quote that I got from this service provider was, he said, $105,000 to $125,000 per officer, right? So okay, all right. So if we need 7 or 8 of them, let's call it $1 million, right? Okay, at least I had something to work with, because I honestly didn't know what that would take. The firm that I was speaking to, they try to work hand in glove with the RCMP. They end up as being extra eyes on the ground for the RCMP. They can contact them by radio. If they got a drunk driver, they follow the car until the Mounties can show up and take over. Things like that. But they'll also do your parking enforcement, and they have a suite of services they can provide. And if you're going to go to a full-time officer all the time, it's a big suite of services, and would be a huge improvement to our municipal enforcement capabilities, without a doubt. And a presence. And I think that's the big part that we're hearing from the community. It's a big part that we know would be that preventative maintenance, is that car with a light bar on the top that's marked municipal enforcement services or whatever it is on the side of the car, and just on patrol and being seen every so often. So one of the things I wanted to come here with, because there's a few these types of firms out there and people that are trying to get into this business and everything. The same question every time I try and do an exploratory conversation, it's, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know yet. So that's where I was kind of hoping that you folks could have the conversation, and we can take our notes and kind of devise at least the general goal. And then if we decide to go RFP, because an RFP is great, you can get the proposals in. You don't have to award it at all if you don't want to, but you get to see people's ideas of how they would meet whatever goals you set out. But I wanted to start that conversation in public with everybody, just to get knowledgeable enough to take the next step into trying to come up with a solution that we could bring before you for consideration.
Councillor Heislop?
Yeah, big question. We can probably come up with what we need, but where's the bottleneck in this whole thing? If we put 50 RCMP officers on the street today, I know it's going to deter a little bit, but I mean, perpetrators aren't stupid.
Well, they still have the laws that have to be, to be able to.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, there's laws that I see that are being broken, and we see in the public they're being broken that didn't get away with years ago, right? It'd be before a judge, and that example that you gave, I know the example, and where's the bottleneck after that? I mean, there's an issue that happened down at my wife's work, and they get the person and put the cuffs on them. They say, where do we take them? So this is where we're coming to. And then the perpetrators are doing the 4-wheelers that are going up the streets, 3 of them the other day that I had 45 minutes on the line for a call, that are doing wheelies in the middle of the parking lot on a Saturday afternoon at the Superstore while everybody's shopping. And they know they can get away with it because they won't chase them. So these new people coming in are going to end up with the same issue. They're going to call the RCMP. RCMP, well, no, we're not going to deal with that because we can't do anything with them, or we can't take them. We don't know where to do with them, and I don't know what this issue is going to. It's going to be a lot of moving balls here, and if this comes in.
So as much as I like,
you have to
go up to
that.
You gotta be on TV.
As much as I like the idea of more authoritative presence in town. What I'd be worried about is the criminals that we have now already aren't scared of the RCMP. They know they're completely immune, so they're really not even gonna, some guy in a car with lights on the top who's like, hey, don't do that, they're gonna laugh at him. It's just more money. Like, why don't we get the RCMP to actually perform their stated purpose? Because I can say from the people I talk to every day at work, nobody feels like the RCMP care at all. When my shop was robbed, they told me, we don't investigate robberies, bye, and they left. When I had a violent, repeat offending intruder with a history of violence against women in my yard last week, I had to call 3 times. They wouldn't come out. They called when I called 911. They came out. And they wouldn't press charges on him for trespassing or harassment or anything. And I was like, I hate to be a Karen, but I need to talk to your supervisor because that's not good enough. He broke the law. There has to be a consequence. And he said there isn't. If they're on drugs, it's mental health. And if it's mental health, our hands are tied. And I was like, what about my mental health, my kids?
I would just say that the reason we're talking about this other layer of policing is it's something that's in our control here around the table, because we're getting beat up here, and we're hearing all the complaints, which are valid, and that's the only thing that we can do. I mean, it's add another layer, and this we do have control over, you know, as a municipal district, right? Whatever we build, if we build it. I mean, again, we're just talking about building it right now. Yeah.
Ask the RCMP to do their job?
Oh, we're asking.
I begged for something to be done, and seems like we're paying a lot of money for absolutely nothing. For example, I used to drive down Rushton Street, and there'd always be kids playing road hockey. It's adorable. You see them all the time. And now there is a shopping cart full of garbage there, just tipped over in the middle of the road. The kids don't play hockey there anymore because a man chased them with a piece of cement. And I believe an RCMP officer lives right on that corner. And I mean, this is just common everyday stuff. So.
Yeah, I would just say it's going to be a combination of this, if we do something like this, and still pushing. It's not saying we're not pushing the government, because one thing's for sure in this last couple of weeks, after our full house the other night, I've said this to anyone that sent me email after email and message on Facebook and people that showed up here, that gave us more power because they're listening to me now. I mean, you know, when they're calling me now, when they're hearing our issue, when we're on the global news, they're calling, you know, what are you saying? You know, we're here to help now, you know. So anyway, that does give us more strength. So, you know, holler away, you know, be a little easy on us, but you know, but holler away, and, you know, throw us the facts and keep on us and give us that power. That's all I can add.
The point I want to drive home is that we're already paying one entity to do this, so an extra entity that also doesn't have teeth, because the RCMP are like, well, we can't do anything.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that teeth too. I mean,
someone else who also doesn't have teeth, basically a mall cop, which is better than nothing, but I mean,
her hands are tied. Like, I was on the floor anyway.
I
interrupted. Yeah, but that's the thing. The bottleneck's not here at the RCMP level. It's the bottleneck's further up the thing. What you can do, and all these perpetrators know what they know the game. They know what they can get away with, and they're just going to sit there and go, yeah, try it, and just do the same thing because they know exactly what they can get away with them. And it doesn't matter if it's a rental agency or not. I don't think would make much difference, but I don't know. We have to do something. And
that's what I mean. I got to do something because either that or just go nuts. But anyway, sorry, Councilor Rodas.
I actually, what I was thinking, Adrian, thanks for your comments. I think I'm actually all for it. I'm just going to be out there. I think it's what the community has been asking for. I think that this RCMP business is going to take a long time and a lot of conversations and a lot of systemic things that need to happen at a higher level to actually impact change. But even just to have someone that we could have control over to park outside your shop when a small business calls and says there's somebody here lingering around and I don't feel comfortable, it would just be so nice as council to be able, because the RCMP doesn't have capacity to do things like that. Same as Rushton Street, like send them up and have them park outside there. And, you know, mall cop or not, it's still a presence, and I guess that is what we're lacking. That's the biggest thing. But I would say from my perspective too, it's important that something I feel is really important, and you know, everyone can have their say on this, is if we're going to invest in these type of protective services, we also need to invest in the social nets to, you know, come together. You know, we have to look at it from all angles, because if we don't have the social nets for these people, then we're just investing in protective services, but there's still going to be a huge gap on the other side. And I know there's major systemic issues too with Horizon Health, like when somebody goes to the psych ward and they're not admitting that, like, we don't have control over that, but we do have control in the nonprofits that we invest in and support in our community, and the other entities that come in and say, we're going to handle this stuff. And I'm just going to be open about it. I mean, the warming center closing, and there was a lot of misinformation about busing people in, but I got the facts at the meeting straight from the source, and we've got 63 individuals from urban St. Stephen and surrounding areas who are local to our community, and they will be in your backyard. Like, there's nowhere for them to go at this point. So I see an increase coming in the spring and summer. People are going to be breaking into sheds and RVs and houses, and if they're hungry, they're going to be seeking out funds to buy food and things like that. And if we're not providing that social net, then we're investing over $100,000 in a protective service. They're just not going to be able to handle any of it. That's just the reality. But I'm just throwing that out there, and I'd love to hear from everyone.
Johnny?
I hear a lot of talk from people like you. I want to know who you're prioritizing. Are you prioritizing somebody from another community that may have issues? Or are you prioritizing a woman from your own community who has issues?
I can respond to that, actually. We actually received a formal complaint about somebody downtown who owned a local business who has been creating some harassment for the staff at the Family Resource Center. So this protective entity could be a way for us to have somebody, a bylaw officer.
Do you know TLC? Have you ever spoke with them?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Right. You're not. A Mickey Mouse cop. Not saying that that's what that is. That's not what I'm saying. But to hire a bunch of people with no power to do anything, what are they going to do?
We're only talking about what our options are here. We didn't hire these people yet. And we're talking, like we talked about the bottlenecks. We gotta figure out the bottlenecks. Right? We may not even do it. We just got to talk.
Who we're prioritizing here? You had a woman business owner stand up and tell you that she's been robbed and harassed. Talk about free sandwiches.
So we've also received a formal complaint.
Yes.
As well, and there have been many formal requests by our community members via email, in person, anecdotally, for increased bylaw services, because one person part-time is simply not enough. So this is just a conversation too about what are we looking at? Are we looking at a full service, or are we looking at just an increase in service? It's just a conversation. But I would say we are prioritizing all citizens, and what we've been hearing across the board, day in, day out.
We really had the shit kicked out of us downtown the last 2 years, you know? And now we've got this.
We got to talk about it to do it. We got to talk about it. We got a budget. And now you're criticizing us trying to take action on this, and now we're trying to take action, and you're saying this isn't what you want? Again, I mean, not to say we're doing this. Again, this is talk. We're building something.
And once we did complain, and we did make a stink, there was a big change downtown. There, for a day.
That's right. Yeah.
And they would pick people up for breaking into cars. A couple hours later, they're back up on Union Street breaking into cars. Right? This problem, I don't know the answer to it. Right? I'm not saying I do. But when a local business person gets up on the podium and says, I've been broken into, I've been harassed, been threatened, and you guys aren't freaking out about that?
Who said we're not freaking out about it, Johnny? Who said that? We're trying to fix this. And please address council, not a councillor, please. We're all in this here, every one of us. One councillor does not have the say. As a council as a whole makes the decisions here.
Is not what it once was. There is no doubt. And within the last 6 months, it's gotten pretty insane. Nobody's coming. We want to know.
That's what we're doing.
Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so some of the people that I've talked to, one of the bottlenecks, they say, is the judicial system. Of course, right? There's not enough courts. There's not enough spots in the to incarcerate people. So typically, it only gets to a certain point, and then it's just pushing back and saying, we can't take them. So you have to do something. So it's a very complex issue, right? You got multi-layers. You got the actual response. Then you got to do something with the people. There has to be, accountability for breaking the law. Currently, you don't have the response. You don't have accountability for breaking the law. It's the whole system. And to Emily's point, you also need to support people from a human standpoint. We're trying at that. But I think this is a more complex issue. I do agree we have to do something as a bridging strategy, but I think this is a complex issue. I think it almost, requires, some other level of expertise, maybe a task force or something to look at all the issues. And I don't think it can be done just within this one municipality. Like this, security force would be a bridging strategy. It's a bit of a deterrent to some of them. It might, some of them might walk around the corner, come right back again as soon as the car drives away because they know you can't do anything to me, right? But really we have to do something to try to help, some type of a deterrent, and then work on, getting the government and getting the other institutions to fix their processes as well.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Mr. Greenlaw. Is that this is a bigger issue than just police officers. We've got homeless. I don't know all the titles. We've gone through that thing, but just recently, I just met many people. As a matter of fact, I just got another one here now. There's a letter in my mailbox. We've got basically preschool children, schools located that have taken their benches in because they've been used as shelters for people sleeping under them. Let's take that's the far end. So now let's just take a homeless person. Don't go into the drug part or anything else. But there's a person out there, persons that have no place to go. Then you find out, and I haven't got the facts yet. I mean, maybe it's part of our whole task force. But we'll just take one for instance. I just found out recently there's a firm, organization, human being somewhere out west just bought 60, 70 apartment units inside apartment buildings. And I have to use lack of a better word, some landlord. And they have marketing managers or property managers that are working for them that's basically not carrying out their duties of basically either putting them out, warning them, or calling the police on them, or whatever the drill will be. The bottom line is, then you go and you add the next mix into it. When you shut down a particular facility and there's 8 or 10 people in it, where do some of them go? They go to these apartments, even though the people are paying whatever they're paying. They go in with these, now it's a bigger family, and they go in there, and then next thing you know, I'm finding out that a lot of these people are kicking the walls out and doing all this. Then I find out, and it's not all fact, guys, then I find out the bottom line is that in one possible building, it's not fact, that I know of, it could be, the bottom line is say there's 9 units. But there's only 4 or 5 of them occupied because the rest of them are all kicked snot and probably haven't got the money to fix it or don't want to fix it, or they could become preoccupied with something in the wintertime, like build a bonfire in the middle of the floor. So I know what the gentleman's trying to say, and I'm assuming he's not referring to any of us here, is not trying to do anything. The bottom line is, I wouldn't want to be a police officer today with knowing that I can't draw my pistol, I can't even break out a can of Raid, I can't even probably touch the person. And all he's waiting for, if I go out here right now, I can say whatever I want to you out here, as long as I don't touch you. And until I touch you, you can't charge me.
That's fair. I completely
Yeah,
agree with that.
but
It's
the bottom line
horrendous.
is, this thing here, I agree with the mayor also, and Wade, and probably everybody else around the table. This is our first time we've been at this, and I've been gathering a lot of data, and I haven't said too much tonight, which is probably, whatever. But it goes beyond just that. Like, as one person explained to me, there were 4 or 5 police officers pull in looking for the people that did something, and they're in one of these cohabitational units they're not supposed to be in, and all the time the police officers are talking to them, they're going out the window on the other side. And so it's just a dog chasing his tail. So I think, I don't know how to put it, the people of the town are going to have to get us a little bit of, I don't want to go out and spend $5 or $6 million bringing more police officers. We may need some, we may not need some, but we certainly have to have bylaw changes. We have to have more investigation into the housing that's here. And we did some things this winter. We've got another organization that got the St. Holy Roly Church. They invited us down for a meeting. As one of the council members said the other day, it could be a core spot where we could start something in that area. So there's a whole bunch of spots around here, but we sure as hell haven't got the expertise in this room, and we may have to hire, not police officers, we may have to hire consultants to come in and actually do a study and see what we can do here. And we're not the only ones. This is all over the world, but I don't know what we're going to do here, and I'll be honest about it, I don't think anybody in this room knows what we're going to do yet. But we got to do something.
Yeah.
Before someone does, I agree with Mr. DiPaolo, before someone gets hurt, or worse. And I'll put it this way, I probably haven't said it in public, but when I was running for councilor, I come across a gentleman and a lady one night. I was actually in Ward 3 knocking on doors by mistake. And I come to a gentleman and I says, I want to know what your key problems are for the new council to be elected in a month's time. He says, well, policing. Okay. I says, do you have a problem with it? No, I don't have a problem at all. He says, I've got a rifle sitting beside my bed, just loaded. End of story. Someone could be in my house, someone's going to die. That's my fear. Resident dies, yes, I'm going to feel real bad. Homeless person dies, yes, I'm going to feel real bad. The bottom line is, I'm with the mayor on this one and the rest of you. We've got to have some time, space, and we got to really come up with, I want to use the words that sometimes I get nailed with, we got to have a strategic plan how to go about this logically, because we could pee a lot of money down the toilet and still not be effective.
Thank you. Councilor Harding.
Let me tell you, we could sit around and talk about this all night, but I would like to say that I would like for Jeff, or for the CAO, to do what he has been doing and working on, and put out requests for proposals, like tomorrow or the next day. And like I said, we can talk about it, but until something's back to Jeff, we don't know what we want, or the amount of money that we could pay, or the amount of money that we couldn't pay, or how many people we get for whatever. We all know there's horror stories around this town, but, we've talked about them enough. Let's do something about it, and let's let Jeff do it.
Yeah. Yeah, Councilor Eastman.
I think something that Brian had stepped on that we really need to concentrate as a council on is shoring up our bylaws. We can shore up our bylaws to the point where you can pretty well tell or make things work the way we want them to work. It's getting into doing that. And I'll bet you the rest of you councilors, the new ones for certain, I haven't read all the bylaws because I can't find the damn things. So, it would be a nice gesture for us to put a workshop together and actually sit down and go through some of these bylaws that we could make an effect on and affect some of this change.
Councilor Heislip.
We have to go and have somebody to go around to go and, make sure those bylaws are being adhered to. That's the thing. But because you can put bylaws, you can't go to your house after 5 o'clock, but that's not going to, not going to effectively happen. But what?
You build the house.
We get more complaints
than
beyond homeless individuals. We get a lot of complaints about small business owners not complying. Sorry.
I love that. know your worship well. The one thing that I was that I'd like to have seen here tonight was a representative from the Chamber of Commerce to come in and give their perspective on there, because I know there's been a lot of emails going back and forth, and they're putting their foot forward in conjunction with council that was indicated, but I would like to see a representative here tonight to go and have their kind of point of view on it, because I think a lot of these issues are happening around the downtown core with businesses. So, and that's been pointed out to council and the community, Facebook and emails, and I would like to see that representation probably at some of these council meetings or on some kind of ad hoc committee, if you want to call it that, or committee that's looking at this, or maybe we should be looking at that. I don't know, but I don't think we need things like parking or anything else. I think we just need boots on the ground. And as one individual was here, there used to be people checking doors at night and seeing if just that deterrence of somebody walking down the street in a uniform could be a deterrence. I think it would reduce it somewhat, but we'd have to see what happens down the road.
Mr. Mayor, could I just say something else?
Yep.
Things that we haven't talked about tonight, and usually they're called tangible and intangible benefits. Well, we see what tangible is. We're going to hire a bunch of police officers. We're going to do what we have to do to keep crime down, etc. But there's a lot of intangible things starting up or actually going on parallel to what we're doing right now. Service New Brunswick over here has had, for probably a month, a retired RCMP officer sitting inside the building. We're not paying for it. Someone's paying for it. There's money. Now that RCMP officer is gone, now they have a special service, probably maybe some of the ones that Jeff was talking about, I don't know. They're in that building now, guarding the fortress for people coming in. They also have buzzers on the door. But yet, every day almost, people are going in, they're found in the washroom. It could be the man's washroom or women's washroom or opposite genders or whatever, and people are scared to go there. Peter Street in St. John the other day. Now they got 2 security officers at Tim Hortons.
And they shut down the dining room. Shut down the dining room, yeah.
So the intangible ones, it seems to be a lot going on in that area that we don't even know what the cost is. Sometimes we say putting up taxes is the wrong thing to do, right thing. But if the government's issuing money to put things like that into private buildings, maybe they could help us out a little bit of doing other things along that, because there's a lot of intangible. I'll tell you, I want to know the other one. This is a low end, probably the lowest one I'm going to tell you about. I was in the other day. I had my knee replaced. I was in 2 days ago in the hospital down here, having my staples taken out. A man comes in his 80s. He didn't come in. They wheeled him in. He's laying there in a wheelchair. And I went over to him, I said, "How you making out?" He said, "Well, not too bad today." He says, "I fell off my step ladder." He says, "I had a broken hip." I said, "I can relate to that this week." He says, "I'm not worried about the hip." He was worried about his hip, of course. But the thing that registers to me is, what was he doing up in the step ladder? Do you want to guess? Putting up a security camera. That's not even measurable on the Richter scale. The bottom line is, we could have a fellow with a broken hip, and many of them. So there's all these intangible things that's happening out there we don't even know about. So anyway, I'm going to shut up. There's just a bunch of whole stuff going on out there that more people, someone's got hurt.
Yes.
I feel like we're all about to be burned on the stake on council, but I just would like to say that we understand, and 2 things can be true at once here. I want to make it known. I may be empathetic because I'm a social worker, yes. But I also am not happy. I live in this community. There are people in my driveway. There are people going through my trucks. There are people walking up and down the street. I've had to also adjust my life. My kids can't walk out. They can't play basketball in the yard, things like that. It's so frustrating, and I just want to make it clear that we are all citizens sitting at this table, and we all feel it, but we also need community support that goes beyond anger and frustration. We need people who are willing to sit at the table and talk collaboratively with us about the solutions, because right now it's really hard as a counselor. We keep getting flooded with emails, but they don't have exact factual examples. Adrian has given us clear examples and other community members, but beyond that, we get a lot of communication that is just, we don't have direct facts that we can work with. We just get general Like, I'll give you an example. I get emails about finding needles, okay? I've probably gotten like 5 or 6 emails. Not one of those emails has a picture. Not one of those emails has told me where the needles are. They've asked for town collection of the needles, which I understand. I've talked about implementing needle boxes, and there are active groups looking at that. But I've asked all 5 of those parents to join me around a table as a mother committee concerned about their children finding needles. I've gotten no responses. I've followed up on those emails. I've gotten no responses. So the frustrating part is, it's kind of like you put it out there, and then you don't receive any communication back, and then it continues to be fueled on Facebook and social media. But we really need citizens to come together around a table, and I'm willing to take the time to do that in the evenings and sit with some parents or sit with some business owners, but we kind of need the opportunity to be able to do that and collaborate effectively.
I think it's important to remember that probably a lot of the moms you were speaking to are working mothers. Like, we're having takeout tonight, we're gonna have takeout tomorrow because I'm at these meetings. And so I think just for a normal person living in town, especially a single mother working minimum wage, she does not have the time to do that, and not her job. She let you know. And the fact that she let you know is already going above and beyond, right? And just as a final note, I don't want anyone to feel crucified or attacked. It's just a frustration, and I feel like I'm speaking for a lot of people who can't make it to the meetings or don't want to come, or don't really care enough to come, but care enough that they want their stories told. But one thing that all of us are feeling is, number one, we are not without compassion. We have plenty of it, but we're running dry. I'm not donating anymore. I used to, but now I will find somewhere else to donate to. I can't donate here in town knowing that, well, if I give that guy a sandwich, he's just gonna have the energy to kick my barn door in tomorrow. And like, I do feel bad about that, but I mean, I have to look after my own first. So as a community, there's only so much we can give. So if we're providing all these services, laundry, 3 meals a day, all this stuff through charitable organizations, the activity center, all that's great, but we can't keep giving to people who only take, because the more you give to people who only take, the more they want, the more they expect. They feel obligated to break into our sheds and our cars. They feel obligated to walk in the middle of traffic. They feel obligated to throw their needles everywhere. They're like, I can do whatever I want. And then the lack of our CMP response is not exactly helping that. They feel immortal and immune to the laws that we all have to follow that they don't. So we in St. Stephen have lots of compassion. We're just running dry. It's hard to care.
Thank you for that. And one thing I'll say too is, there's always going to be those select individuals, and that's out of our control. Like, there's always going to be individuals who resist any support, continue to bash things in and break into things, and we don't have control over their actions, but we do have control over supporting our community better with protective services, and then providing a social net, because when the services are there, I know from the Unsheltered Committee, and people don't like to hear this, but 5 people went to detox and 5 got rehoused, and that's 10 individuals that were previously on the street exhibiting some mental health issues and kind of like violent behavior, and now that's 10 people off out of 70 in 6 months. So if we don't do anything, like even provide meals and things like that, then we don't see any of those outcomes at the end. But I'm saying there can be room for both things. Like, we can invest in both sides, and that's okay, you know?
All right, yes.
I think we got to kind of do 2 things here. You know, I think one thing we have to probably address the RCMP and speak to them and say, you know, this is what we see as your response. Here's what we're hearing. Is there something you can do to enhance your response so that we get a better product? 1. 2, we got to give Jeff what he needs. If he's going to go out for an RFP, we've got to say what it is we want. He just can't make it up. You know, is it by law enforcement, which I think is extremely valuable? Is it, is it the patrols, the foot patrols, the marked cars, so on and so forth. So, I think that's the two things we have to do. We have to go at the RCMP, see what we can do there, and at the same time, run the RFP for the enhanced security service. And then in the meantime, I still think we need more discussions, more talks, because this is a bigger problem than we can solve ourselves.
Yes.
Just building on what Wade was saying, there's also, as counselors, we all come from different backgrounds, but I know there's some people here in the audience that's got some experience around this, and there's probably other people also from the Chamber of Commerce, Police Department, other people that may want to get involved in this committee and build some synergy, because we do not have all the answers. We haven't been part of it. So some of these people that may have been part of it may be able to come in and form whatever we're going to talk about and use the expertise from the community to try to do something about it.
Okay, so there's another meeting for that. That's tomorrow night. Our meeting tonight is to discuss municipal enforcement and what that option is, and discuss what the cost could be, what it is that what kind of action we want them to take, what we want to call them, all that kind of thing. So let's kind of get to that and move forward.
I think perhaps the most productive step forward might be for my deputy and I to sit down, draft what we think we've heard and what we think a potential solution might be, and give a document to you to work from. Because we can talk in circles for a while around the same topic, but we can try to take what we heard tonight, see how it fits inside our system, just the scope of work. We won't even worry about the money side of it yet, but say, we think this is what you want. And then once you have that in front of you, it's much easier for you to critique that proposal or that suggestion, to refine it down to what we want, and then we can build an RFP if that's council's directive. So in the interest of making it productive steps forward, maybe that's a good outcome from this meeting, is just for us to get something on paper for you to really dig into.
Part of it was what their authorities would be, because there was talk about bylaws and stuff. We're very restricted in what we can do with bylaws. It's set by the province. You can create bylaws for certain things, and bylaws are not going to solve these problems. We can fine you for parking. We can maybe fine you for throwing some garbage on the ground or sleeping in a park. But if you make too much noise and we can get a decibel reading off you, maybe we can fine you, but we'll try and lay out what we think that they can do. And the reality is it's a presence more than anything. And that's basically what you're going to get. It's a presence. So if somebody's down, going to break the windows out of your business or whatever, and that car happens to come, maybe they'll think twice about doing it. Maybe they'll just come back an hour later. But a lot of these people, they're scattered. Right now, they want to break your window. If you can interrupt that, they're off to something else. They forgot all about wanting to break your window, and they're going down the road and going to go jump in the river or something next, right? They're not necessarily following logical, thinking. So it's about interrupting that and having the presence, and I think that's what I'm hearing.
And that, and maybe a pilot project or something too. Maybe we can be a pilot project for the province and some of this stuff, because we don't know how it's going to work yet, right? But
yeah, like I said, we're being pressured by the downtown businesses to do something. So that's why that's what we're talking about this tonight for. And I'm not sure everyone was in here tonight when I first started about policing, but the province has stated that they are going to hire 50 new officers, but those officers are going to be spread out throughout the province based on data. So we need to, again, as painful it is to call those things in and wait on that damn phone, you got to do it. Unless we can find a quicker way of getting that communication in there to do so, then that way we can get those officers that they're going to put out in the province. What's that?
Could our municipal officers feed that data? No?
Not to them, but they would feed the data to us. Then.
I got caught anyway. I had a moment. One thing you can do is you can go down to the RCMP depot and go in and talk to them there. And as long as you tell them to put that on the record, that's another way of doing it. And it's a little more immediate if you're really frustrated, I've found. It works pretty well. You know, I really like our community. I think that, I think going forward, just from, I had something else I was going to say, but this seems to be more pressing with me. Having taught school all my life, you mean, I've taught some of you here. I hate to see everything go down us and them, right? Us and them. And I know we feel like we are in a crisis, and we are, but let's look at a community. Is there any communities out there who have managed to do this well, have managed to be, you know, to, and I know a lot of communities right now are in crisis, but some have been there already, and some may have some tools that they could, you know, share with us as to a good way to go forward. That might be a community our size. I don't really know, but we, instead of just trying to digging in something that we really don't know, blind, maybe there's some guidance out there. Okay.
We are doing that as a province too, like other municipalities. Like I would be talking to Woodstock, for example, who are in the same boat we're in. They're the same size. Oh yeah, no. I mean, if you look across BC, they started this 10 years ago, and they're still in it deep, and it's not working out. So I don't want to use that for an example neither. But again, yeah. Oh no, we gotta. Information is power. We gotta. We can't reinvent the wheel neither. Yeah. So we'll take advantage of that and see what we'll see what more details you can come up with for us, and maybe I think we should probably end this for now. And sorry.
There's one very brief closed item. So just a motion to go into close would be appropriate, Your Worship.
Okay. All right.
But I won't keep you here long, I promise.
Okay. I need a mover. Move into closed. Councillor Eastman, Councillor Wright. All those. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.